Sheer-Lee Tali Jongnloed. It was 2016-17, and I was doing academic work around ESP and consciousness and philosophy of medicine. It began with philosophy of sciences, and I noticed the science of psychiatry developed counter-critical to how we see a development of science. My instructor, that was an MD, told me, when I read Feyerabend, this philosopher of science, I don't know how to treat a patient. And so I looked into how do we know that we know, and what the ontological unit is. I defined it body-mind, and you look into the science of consciousness. The many neuroscience articles, there are actually, some say there's a zone in the brain where there is consciousness. And I was looking into these things, and you look into holistic medicines, into conventional medicines, the research, comparative studies, trying to infer what are the premises, the epistemic and ontological premises in those practices. And so I noticed that I tend to change my mannerism and my voice according to things, and I began to look into that pattern. I had actually a German student colleague. She was studying linguistics with me, and she said it's like a chameleon, that my behavior, I don't know if she referred to it as a trauma response. In any case, I decided to focus also on the body, because I said I look at the body mind and I don't study through the body, but only through, back then, taking amphetamines to concentrate. It was after peril of defense. And I went through incredible emotional experiences. And so I decided to take a look at the body. And one of the places where I was a TA, someone was doing what seems to be like trying to control or mind control, but through the body mind, trying to move other people. And it was very interesting, but very frightening. And I was trying to return to my body. And also I noticed that it seems like he acts this way in a trauma response, and the breathing doesn't reach all the way through the body, although he's had a tremendous ability to stand still, to command charisma with observation and so on. And I was simply trying to return to my body. And I left the TA ship, and I wrote about the experience, and everybody around was dramatically alarmed. So there I was looking into ESP, medicine, and that was around 2017. And there was a psychological abuse to that aspect I was trying to recover from. Very simply could recover my identity. The things that happened then would be a series of events where those attempts to get into the consciousness and the psyche were very intense. And me as a researcher looking into that, having various experiences, speaking with people, one tells me that he had a doctor that made experiments in him, and that people want to have like androgen, something like that. He said it's bad, and I was like, why is it bad? Like what's wrong with that? But the problem was that he was, I think, raped by a doctor. And I began to speak with people also. When you look into the phenomena, of the body mind. So you look into consciousness, and I said if consciousness leaves a trace in the body, um, and so you look into the design perspective, but also the bottom up and top down processes of generation of consciousness and its effect on the body. You look into after death experiences, okay, all things that are a linkage to connection. Um, and I remember that in my own life, one of the experiments that would actually lead to me having funding to have studies was when I was in 2007, and I felt yet another thing, another blending of identities, but in a way it's terribly frightening. And I was seeing things that I didn't know to explain of what time, of what scenery, and they had to do with rape and the nature of humanity, and the machine and the man and the machine, the person and the machine, um, and the splitting of identity. There's something very weird. And I noticed that the person that I was communicating back then, they were going through these things as well. And I also noticed that there's something political, like something to do with the politique shift, the shifts of states. Um, and at that time, you try to go to the usual measures. There's a psychologist to take this pill or that pill, but nothing resolves anything. It has to do with life itself. Um, to feel life, people need to feel love. This is what I've experienced. And then I know that I am exposed to, satanic ritual abuse only the last couple of years. And there were rituals that were done, but not in the physical, that you feel on the physical body. Um, and you go to psychologists because you study these things, it connects you with all kinds of stuff. You go to psychologists, and they have what seems to be like a power cut in their brain, and then the identity shifts, their identity shifts. And there were psychologists that tended to identity issues and so on. um, and then one of the personalities tried to kill me, one of the personalities tries to um, show me things, one of the personalities tries to show me of where there was satanic abuse and how much is connected to that. um, and it pertains to the identities. And then the I would only when I would look at charts of people. So I was doing a podcast, and then I looked at charts of people. So you have this field, that field, okay, actors, whistleblowers. I began with scientists because that was the real connection that I had to begin with. And I was looking into the astrology of the times and so on. And I felt that that predicts more stuff than most of it. It doesn't. It's not that you don't need the other sciences, but this is so. It has a lot of power to predict things. I began to really study the patterns. So what I noticed is that there began to be what people could experience as telepathy, but it wasn't one to one. It wasn't like a person thinking a thought and I think a thought at the same time. And the times were sometimes shifting, sometimes not. Um, And so when I began to look at the same time of testimonies of people who ran away from cults, of satanic abuse, and so on, then you could see how they create for what people call Epsteins, or how they create, but also the patterns here are very interesting because those people have a personality that is in the light or seen. It's kind of like the soul is looking for the light. But the soul, you see it as traces in the consciousness and in the body and in the mannerisms and in the voices. And so what is a human being, the ontological human being unit is, when you ask yourself, how do you know that you know? It's very intricate. But the curating experience time and time again is a love experience. through the love that is accessible, there's actually loving. And it was very funny because in 2017 there was the Me Too wave, and what we wanted was to get back to our bodies. But the more I got connected with my consciousness, with my body, it was actually not just my body. And what matters is light. What matters is to be in the light, and to be in the light and you sleep well, your nervous system is okay. And it's kind of like it's life energy, but it's not necessarily one-to-one sexual energy. And then it has a remediating effect on the lower chakras or on the lower bodies or astral bodies or whatever you want to call that. And so you look through the light to find of where you can incarnate in a way that is also carnal. And then there is the seeking of personalities and faces and mannerisms and voices and things that are inner and external, and a connecting of those things in a way that is in love, as the journey of the soul, if I can reconnect. All in all, I see attempts to assassinate people, and I see synchronicities between the events that they had in their lives and the events that I had in my physical being. And I remember when I was doing with the channeling experiments, I was hearing the connection between the experiences. Sometimes it would be through words, through events. It was something that was trying to happen, and it feels like more like a network of personalities that is going through a simultaneous time frame or time shift. And you try to understand what the purpose of this is, and it sometimes seems like we are sharing existence. And you look, and then you look back to the testimonies of satanic abuse. You see all this information about clones and how people, even the jab, okay, how people are created, and the fact that that they go through intense torture that basically gets them out of the body, and that is what the Epsteins that we see. But there's also the other part, which is the sharing. It's kind of like the consciousnesses share light, and people say, oh, these personalities, they cannot create anything, they cannot this. No, it's people that go through trauma, or beings that go through trauma, the consciousness and physical being that were born, whether it's IVF or cloning or whatnot, and they went through it is the trauma that disconnects from the body, but the consciousness wants to be in the light, and the consciousness is constantly in the light. And then there are the behaviors and the patterns and the emotions and the experiences that are of trauma realms. And that is what you see, on the news. Oh, that person, I don't know, is being seen with that person, or that person had a scandal with that person, or um, and it's very difficult to have a connection that is a body, heart, mind, and soul that is in union, because to be intimate is very difficult in this sense because of the trauma, and you begin to have some would call it programming, but there is an overwhelm of sensory data overwhelm, okay, and people call it a derealization and so on. But the fact is when I was actually, at the same time that I was studying, I was trying to learn about relationships, because I know for career you need that, and had a relationship coach, and she wanted to focus very much on praxis. So was trying to date the people and see what happens to me, to my psyche, when I try to actually date people. And I saw that I cannot, like, a person try to be too close to me, and then I'm like, I shift back and I ran away from most people. It was like, but hey, I want to be intimate. I want to have intimacy. I want to have a loving sexual life and relationships. And that was taking me on a road where one day I would be completely suicidal, not attempting anything. Um, and I was like, what is going on? Where is me? And I began to try and recollect of my, yes, pardon me, my sexual experiences and what the things that I saw as I was a child. I was just looking for an answer. And, testimonies of people, anarchists talking about something that is done, and I go through that experience in 2019. But I would only hear a testimony in 2024, 5. And the rituals are terrible. The rituals are terrible. The dark stuff, because they're supposed to get a person dissociated from the body. And yes, you do have a lot of charisma, because your thriving consciousness, um, connecting, and people can relate to you. But in the physical, in the darker realms, you don't always see that. You try to stay in the light. Try to stay in the light. And then you hear about people, I don't know, uploading a consciousness to computers, to this, to that. And I'm like, I don't understand in these things, but I can definitely experience something that looks technological, and then experience something that's incredibly human. And the I am. And since my very foundation, I was born in a natural birth. I know my mother told me the story of my birth. I was born in the morning. It was a hospital, old hospital, where you could see they were building new buildings, but it was an old building, and there was a window that you could see over the plants. And my father, that was it was not a sperm, but it was not IVF. Okay, it's just I don't want to get into too much details. Just the memories of my birth, and my father could see the dew because it was the morning. But then when my mom was birthing, he was shocked with the noise, with the voice. So it's like, why are you screaming? Why is this? It's like, it's so unusual because he comes from Netherlands, and most birds are home birds. So why didn't he hear a woman birth? Like, he had seven, there were seven brothers and sisters. Why didn't he hear like a woman birthing? Like, if it's a home bird, you hear that, like, it screams. So I don't understand that. But other than that, it was a very quick birth, and I was born physically. Okay, if it's not through, I was not conceived through IVF either. It's not. I don't want to get into the privacy of my parents. Um, um, and and that's what I remember ever since I was a baby. There were memories for other things, and then you hear for the other things, you think it's different life, but you think it's also happening in this life. Um, and some of them had to do with sexuality. And sometimes I was feeling the soul of the perpetrator. And so it was difficult. And on a consciousness level, I was like, sexuality is the most, when I was an older person, I was like, sexuality is the most beautiful thing. It's a sacred life energy that is of connection and love. It's something that I always knew. And I'm like, why is it that people make of it something so violent? It doesn't make sense. And all the wars people have, women, men, it's like what it so does not make sense. Um, and then when I was writing about it, because I was trying to seek help to curate when maybe childhood trauma, maybe this, maybe that, and it was not coming from my parents. So they were also not sending me into any places like like what Annika described, nothing like that. So, but the soul was definitely elsewhere. So that I don't understand. I remember that when I saw motion pictures, and I was so excited. There's motion pictures, and I'm living in a time where there's motion pictures, and it was just so exciting to me. The science and everything. But everybody was like concerned about like the internet, and I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful that people can connect in this way. But I didn't understand who I was, and I still don't. Um, when I was child, I would paint like channeling, and then I would have channeling. I would paint. It would be like I copied exactly the picture, and then suddenly it went off, and I couldn't paint at all. It seemed like a child painting. And my mama, she took it to a teacher. She was like, "Oh, your child, look how beautiful." And the teacher was like, "Yeah, this probably copied the picture, and then for the rest is the child." um, I was very excited about the sciences. And it seems like and also what I remember emotionally, it was difficult to experience my feelings. I was taught like a boy, in the sense that yeah, that um, how should I say it? Like I couldn't cry. There was never reason to cry. Sometimes it's shame, but it's and I felt some unconscious shame that in 2007 I remember it was survivor's guilt. So those are the things that I try to connect with the science and the I am, and I try to connect. Or I would try to look in the mirror, as soon as my eyes don't look with the same as my eyes. I was like, is this my eyes? Not necessarily. Sometimes they would have looks of people that are angry or this or that. I'm like, but it's not. And when I was younger, then I remember I would try to look in the mirror like to fix my hair, to fix my face, and I would put on, I don't know, makeup, and I have to take it off. It just bothered me. That is okay what I know, but I loved studying and I loved writing. Um, and I didn't see it as channeling. I remember with Gigi Young, I listened to her and she said, "Oh, the writers, there's this program, there's this." I was like, "No, they're artists. They don't always understand what they channel, and we always channel." And when I went to therapy uh, after university, I tried to be more conscious about what I channel. So to channel something good, something of the light, and it's challenging. Sometimes you are angry and you want to express a boundary, but then there is somebody's tried to give commands to that. It happened with Lars because I was focusing on the way that people are created and the scandal with the rubber bank, which was satanic abuse and so on. And I was talking about how the fact that the people are created are both perpetrators and because of the trauma they have to both perpetrate and be victims. And I said people focus on the bloodline, that is, that, but I said it's not a bloodline. It is for the torture. And then I felt like there was somebody trying to give command to torture Lars. And I was like, no, I'm not going to post that because I don't want that to be. And he was someone who was whistleblower on that because he went through this and they required them to give names. So I had to give the names. I was like, the politicians that were also, they both went through that and did that. And they're also musicians. So it's very funny and interesting and not funny at all because later these people are accused in many things, and then indeed people want to curate from those rituals, and the fact that when they understand what's going on, that they're being tortured and they're not supposed to survive this. I was not supposed to survive either, but I was not physically there, and yet to access me there would need to be some sort of trauma. So I was born in a physical birth, but the I am, how was I born? I don't know. So this is another point of testimony. It's my birthday, by the way. And I was looking even to things like, well, because my life was threatened, I was trying to, scientifically see patterns and see who is the coalition. Okay, this is what you do. Okay, you try to see what other people have the interest to protect themselves from assassination. Other patterns. I was looking, and there was a journalist that was assassinated, and there were patterns that were leading to JFK. And I was looking at what his program, and it was occult symbolism. And I was like, okay, let's try to form coalition of people who are in risk of assassination, and they were working it like the different parties, sometimes politically, but I see that the patterns are the same patterns, and I'm like, okay, that is not for the personal experience and the experience of those people on the life and death thingy. And then, of course, when you tend to these things, then yeah, people try to photograph you, or yeah, if you don't have where to sleep, you go to a demonstration because there was a tent there, so people try to photograph you, and all these things that are happening around that, and they try to make you make the symbolism of the two. And I was like, what is that too? And I was like, no, don't try, try to get to your hand gestures, and this is um, this is just fascinating. And then you see with these people, they try to replace a head of NATO in AI, and I'm like, but it's already, or is it, or what is going on? But it's also there's the person, okay, that there's people are afraid to lose their job. It's not just the common people, and they create synchronicities between people, but not only in the physical. And then you're like excited. It's like, oh, what is it with that time and what is with that time? Pattern recognition. You become like a machine learning yourself, but an experiential one. Um, the psyops were, ooh. And then you see people are framed in a certain way. It's like the frame that is they constantly lie. And I was like, well, lying is a pattern of trauma because you cannot tell the truth. And therefore they constantly apologize. What are they apologizing for? Removing restrictions on people being able to get in and out of their homes too soon, when later we would have a whistleblower telling us that there was a military operation guised as these emergency rules. So they were trying to remove these emergency rules. Then they had to apologize for that. And then people frame them because they. So, and I look into near-death experiences, and I try to do mediumship. So I was asking the dead journalist, basically. It's like, hey, let's try to channel. And there are all kinds of interferences. And the first thing is telling me this country is North Korea. And I didn't understand what he was talking about. But also the experience of moving to the light. And then I became codependent on the experience of being in the light. So to escape there. And because I was asking him about his death, and every time I was asking him about his death, it's kind of like a new, uh, yeah, and there's this Alice down the rabbit hole programming, um, and all that juxtaposed with people being trafficked, with attempts to traffic me, with astral rape, with attempts to make you feel insecure about your looks, about your this, about your that, um, uh, uh, juxtaposed with loving experiences, with all these things. And I'm like, this is crazy. But I wanted to post it here. Um, so I had a channel called Spirit of Matter, which previously was channeling science. I had Rockefeller Astrolix on Beetroot, Spirit of Matter on YouTube. Um, there's my name, Sheer-Lee Tali Jongnloed, and there is this channel, um, and there are, and every time I have active memory sozusagen, then the something that they would steal the phone or make me forget the phone. And there is a difference. You can see, you can trace it in the consciousness where you think a thought, and then when there is an interference. It is it's very fantastic that the body awareness makes you aware of, but also is not the body. But to get back to the body is you become like a web of life, and you try to have a good life experience. So this is just all, fascinating information, and yeah, I will post it as testimony, but also as my research.